Secretary Alexiak, Deputy Secretary O'Brien, and Deputy Secretary Trusky, thank you for being here today. And those numbers or lack of numbers or the things that you said in answer to the gentlelady from Philadelphia's questions, I think provide very little solace to the 500,000 people who have yet to receive their unemployment compensation check. But I do want to say this to you. I truly appreciate all of the hard work that the people who are responding to claims have put in the department. They are working around the clock, and their efforts are appreciated. Which leads me to the question of how much lead time was the department provided in advance of Governor Wolf's mandated closure on March 19th?
I can tell you that at our January cabinet meeting is the first that I remember. There may have been something in December, but I don't remember specifically. What I know at our January monthly cabinet meetings, at our January cabinet meeting, this was discussed, particularly Secretary Levine gave an update on it. We started talking about where this would go. We had more updates at our February meeting. We had an exercise at PEMA looking at what may be involved in this. As this was getting closer, we began internally to look at what do we need to do, and the charge I gave, we started a COVID-19 work group, a small work group in the agency, and the charge was, if we got a call today that the Capitol complex is closing tomorrow, would we be ready? And we began looking into what it would take to get our folks set up at home. We soon expanded that group to include all of our deputy secretaries and other members of our leadership team. We were talking daily about what we had to do. And when the time came that the Capitol complex was being closed, I think were as ready as any agency that I know of that could respond. So we got.
Was there any anticipation that nearly 1.7, now your department came out with 1.8 million people would be out of a job and thus thrown into your unemployment compensation system in January, in February, in March? And if so, what type of preparation did you make? Because this was truly a sweeping impact on the unemployment compensation system, as well as on the businesses that were mandated closed by the governor.
Right, and I want to be careful in equating the 1.8 million to people out of work. We don't know yet how many people are out of work, and we'd have to really get into the weeds talking about the claims as to why that isn't a one-on-one correlation. What I was telling you is what we were doing. We were looking at what could we do. Were we anticipating 1.7 million new claims or a million in 3 weeks? Absolutely not. I don't know anyone, anywhere across the state or across the country that would have been ready for that. I think we were as prepared as we could possibly be, given some of the numbers that you've heard about staffing and federal dollars. Our federal allotment, $124 million in 2016, 109 in 2020. It's gone down consistently because of the unemployment that we had, and we were staffed to deal with that. When we knew more was coming, we worked with HR, our Human Resources Department, to hire more intake interviewers. We began working with IT. What can we do to upgrade our system? All those things that I mentioned are how we responded. And we continue to respond. It wasn't like the governor closed the Commonwealth and we all of a sudden said, what do we do now?
So there was no attempt at the department to quantify the number of people that potentially could be unemployed based on closures of sectors of industry?
I don't know if Bill can answer that, but I can tell you what our primary concern was. Our primary concern was getting our system and our employees up and ready to respond when people were seeking unemployment compensation benefits. I would love to have the opportunity when this is done to look back and see what we can learn from this. But at the time, our focus was what can we do to respond to the unprecedented needs that we saw once this started, and it grew and grew and grew, that we knew we were going to face.
Well, and I will say that I completely agree with you. When this is all said and done, there's going to have to be a lot of reflection, because certainly I think there will be great opportunities to do things better. God forbid we ever face this type of crisis again.
I completely agree, Senator.
We talked about the fact that many individuals are now seeking unemployment compensation through the PUA. How many of the claims are from those individuals who are self-employed that you have processed?
I don't know that number. I don't know if Deputy Trusky, if you have that number.
No, Secretary,
Do you
I
know
don't.
how many PUA applications that you have received in total?
We have processed 150,000. I know some of those people that, as Deputy Secretary Trusky mentioned, the federal regulations require that traditional UC is the option of first choice. So when people applied, as they were, if it indicated that they had received W-2 wages or they were eligible for traditional workers' comp, they were kicked into that system. Some of that was a glitch that we were able to fix within a few days. But I don't know, Bill, again, if you have any further detail.
No, we haven't drilled down, Senator, as far as to see what segments of the population in PUA have applied. We're focused on getting the back end of the system up and running and getting payments out the door as quickly as possible.
Right.
And so to Helen, who cuts my hair, and Angie, who owns the salon where I get my hair cut, and to all those self-employed independent contractors, when can we tell them that they're going to receive a check in the mail?
Senator, I would add my son-in-law to that list, who is a chef who works part-time, no longer cooking, but he is now teaching safety courses, the Safe Serve courses to
And when can
restaurants.
he expect to receive a check?
Same time as your hairdressing. We are hoping to get those checks out the door sometime next week, as long as the technology cooperates, and thus far it has. Bill, I don't know if you want to add any more to that.
So
No,
one last question for you, Mr. Secretary, and that is that Act 60 of 2012, I had a front row seat. I was actually staff member for the previous chair of the House Labor and Industry Committee. And my understanding was that after 8 years in the Rendell administration, the Unemployment Compensation Fund was $3 billion in debt to the federal government. Through a lot of negotiation, labor, business, House, Senate, governor, Democrats and Republicans, that debt was privately financed, saving taxpayers $60 million. We finally came through those increased payments, and the fund was 181% capitalized going into this crisis. Where can we get the numbers on the funding, how it stands, how the Unemployment Compensation Fund is holding up, and what we can expect in terms of financial projections going forward?
Right. We check that fund regularly. We know we are already in consultation, and to finish the 180%, we were well on the way to being fully solvent. That's the UC Trust Fund sometime this summer, which would have been a 250% funding. That would be considered fully solvent. We are in, it is taking a hit, obviously, with the tremendous numbers that we are facing. We follow that every day. We are in consultation with the United States Department of Labor. We know that part of the Federal CARES Act will allow us to borrow interest-free from the federal government if we need to replenish that fund. And again, I'll ask Bill to fill in any details I missed.
Senator, we continue to update the chairs of the Labor Committee and their staffs regularly on the fund balance. The U.S. Treasury only updates it bi-monthly. As of 4/16, we had approximately $2.6 billion in the fund. We just came out of the first tax quarter of this year, and fortunately, our receivables weren't much less than last year's first quarter. So you have to commend the employer community for doing their part to keeping the fund afloat, because our collections weren't down much from last year. So we will continue to update the 4 labor chairs and staff as we get updates to the fund.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.